By far the easiest shot in all of pickleball to master is the serve, and that's because you're in complete control. There's no pace coming at you. You're creating all of the pace. You're deciding where the ball is going. The only problem is that for beginners, it's extremely uncomfortable. Okay, the grip's uncomfortable. The actual serve motion is uncomfortable because they're so used to just blocking the ball over and pushing it over the net. So my only ask for this video is that after you watch it, you practice it and you stick with it, because it's gonna start to feel uncomfortable right from the get-go. You're gonna be like, this can't possibly be right. I just hate it. And you'll go away from it just because it's uncomfortable. So my only ask is that you stick with it, because after you hit 300, 500, it's gonna start to feel comfortable. After you hit 1,000, you're gonna be like, whoa, what was I doing before? This is absolutely amazing. And then after you hit 10,000 plus, you're gonna be a master. It's gonna be like brushing your teeth. You'll be so glad that you didn't go back to what you were doing. And the way that I'm gonna teach you this is with 3 specific steps. It's literally that simple. Stick with it. Let's open the playbook. So there are 3 specific rules that we have to follow every single time that we serve. First of all, the serve has to be underhand. Okay, so we can't come over our head and obviously serve the ball. It has to be underhand. Second of all, it has to be beneath our waist. And that's defined in the pickleball rulebook as our navel or belly button. So below our navel is where we have to make contact with the ball, meaning we can't make contact up here. And then the third rule is that contact has to be made beneath our wrist. So somewhere below our wrist and below our waist. And so that means that our paddle has to be beneath our wrist at contact, meaning I'm pointing my paddle tip towards the ground at contact. If it's up here, this would be illegal, even if it's beneath my waist. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that anyway. So now that you know that, let's hop into step number 1, which is our footwork. Now, footwork is our foundation that's going to be able to help us create power, rotation, and spin as we come through the shot. There are 2 types of stances that we can stand in as the server. Either an open stance like this, where our toes are pointing towards the net or towards the baseline. So this is open stance. Or a closed stance like this, where one toe is pointing towards the side fence, the other toe is going to be pointing towards the net post. The net post is the post on the side of the net, okay? So I personally like this stance, especially for beginners, because as you rotate through the ball, you're going to be stepping into the court, whereas with an open stance, you're going to be stepping backwards away from the court. Probably going to lose out on power by doing that. And so it's nice to be able to get your momentum moving forward to add just that little bit of extra power and pop into your serve. So with the closed stance, first things first is our non-dominant foot is going to be pointing towards the net post. So I'm pointing towards that side post with my non-dominant foot. The reason that I want to point it there is so that I can rotate or pivot through the shot. So if you watch this foot, as I come through my serve, it's pivoting. If I don't point that towards that net post, and instead I just point it straight up the line here, I can't pivot as far in the direction that I want to go. So make sure that you're pointed towards that net post so that you can have a full pivot into the court and where you want to go. After that, this non-dominant leg is going to be shoulders distance apart. Okay, we're going to be bending our legs, and all of the weight starts on that dominant leg. So prior to actually hitting the ball, all the weight's on my dominant leg, and then I transfer to my non-dominant as I make contact, and then I step into the court. You can totally step into the court after you make contact with the ball. Prior to contact, you can't be touching the line, you can't be touching inside the court, you can't step and hit. Pretty obvious, but some people don't know. So just make sure that you're behind the baseline prior to contact. As soon as that ball leaves your paddle, you can step into the court, which is what you want to do so that that momentum is moving forward. That's going to add some speed onto your serve. So a lot of people might ask, what net post do you want to point at depending on what side of the court you're on? Always going to be the net post to your dominant side. So it's the same net post every single time. I'm right-handed, so it's always the net post to my right. That's the net post that I'm pointing at, regardless of if I'm serving here or if I'm serving here. I'm pointing towards that net post. That's going to help me to be able to pivot and get the ball exactly where I want it to go. One more thing to note with this is wherever we point our non-dominant hip is where the ball is going to go. So if you notice that the ball is maybe not going to the correct service box, then point your hip a little bit further and try to aim maybe for the side fence. If it's maybe going in the other service box or something like that. Point towards that side fence, hit the same exact serve, actually try to hit the side fence, and what you'll find is that overcompensating puts it where you want it to go. After you do that like 300 times, you won't even have to think about it anymore, and the ball will just magically go where you want it to. Before we head into step number 2, I want to tell you about this video sponsor, Chirp. So I've been using the Chirp wheel for the past couple of years. I actually reached out to them because I wanted them to sponsor my video. Happily, they agreed to sponsoring this section of the video, and cool enough, they're offering 10% off to all of my subscribers site-wide. In pickleball, it's super common to get sore and stiff muscles, and they literally have every single product that you can imagine to massage out those muscles and keep you out on the court playing. The chirp wheel is what they're most known for. This is what they went on to Shark Tank with. And I love using that because it makes my back feel loose and ready to go every single day. But I've also been using the RPM Mini after playing, especially after a long day of pickleball. You get really sore and tight, just loosens everything up, which is absolutely awesome. So again, if you're a human being and you get sore when you play pickleball, be sure to check them out. I promise that their products work. I absolutely love them. As I said before, I'd already been using them. Get 10% off with my link at the top of the description. Let's head into step number 2. Next thing to talk about is our grip that we're going to be holding as we hit the shot. This is where the uncomfortableness comes in, as well as how we want to drop the ball or toss the ball before we make contact. So first of all, the grip that we're going to be holding is called an Eastern forehand grip. Now, if you've never heard that, I completely understand. I'm going to be teaching you it. It's super simple to understand. Harder to stick with the grip because it feels uncomfortable. But what you're going to be doing, you put your paddle absolutely flat like this. As you can see, the paddle has 8 different bevels on the bottom. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it creates kind of a stop sign shape. You're going to be going on this number 1 bevel, okay? Right here, this is Eastern, all the way up. And you're going to be putting your dominant knuckle right here on that, as well as the bottom of your palm on that same exact one. So as if you were to draw a line from here to here, that's what you're going to be putting on that number 1 bevel. So this is Eastern. So this grip might feel comfortable to you, very rarely does it, or it might feel uncomfortable, which is probably more common. Just stick with it and it will pay dividends in the long run, because this is putting your paddle at the correct angle as you make contact to create the most amount of spin and get it in consistently. So now that we know the grip, we need to know what to do with our non-dominant hand, okay, with the ball. So you'll see a lot of players will actually toss the ball up prior to serving, and that's fine, and it's super simple to still hit the ball. But when you're trying to practice the correct motion, it's hard to get the timing right when that ball's going up and back down while keeping the correct form, which is the most important part. So instead, what I suggest is, instead of palm up and tossing the ball, palm down and drop the ball. So you're here, you're going to drop the ball, and that will really help with your timing because you won't have to think much about it, since you just simply have to drop the ball. It's always going to drop in the same exact location. Whereas with the toss, we don't know how high it's going to go and how far it's going to drop. Step number 3 is the actual swing path. So keeping in mind everything before our foot stance, as well as holding the ball out in front of us and holding the correct grip, we're now simply going to draw a Nike swoosh through the air. That's all that the motion is. So if you think about drawing a Nike swoosh, it's really a C that we draw, and then it has that swoosh at the end. So we draw a C, we're coming from up, down, up. And that creates that Nike swoosh motion that helps us to create top spin on the ball and also power with that outward swoosh motion as we wrap the paddle around our neck. So think about that Nike swoosh motion as you're practicing this shot. But basically what you're going to be doing, you hold the ball out where you would normally, and then you're here with your paddle. Notice how my paddle starts up, because the Nike swoosh starts up. It's up here, and then it finishes off and swishes up. So that's where we're starting our paddle. We're not starting it way up here at the end of the swoosh, but at the beginning of the swoosh. So I'm here, drop down, and I like to talk about petting the dog right here, as if there was a small or medium dog that I'm petting on the ground. And then I pull out and I finish that swoosh motion. So here, draw the Nike swoosh. We have to implement what's called a windshield wiper. So a windshield wiper looks like this. If we think about it on our cars, it's going back and forth across the windshield. So as I do this in slow-mo, notice my windshield wiper when it happens. So as it happens, I'm down, pet the dog, and then directly after petting the dog, I'm going outward and upward while creating this windshield wiper. I'm taking the water off the glass of my windshield. So I'm down, outward and upward, and I take that water off of my windshield. This is what's creating all of your top spin as you're coming through the shot. Now this outward motion is creating all of your power, as well as your legs coming through that shot. Best way to think about this actual motion is fingers down. So fingers up, fingers down, fingers up. Right at that last second, fingers up, right as I make contact with the ball. That's creating all of that top spin to bring the ball back down. So the way that's gonna look is I hold the ball out in front of me, I start with that tip here at the beginning of my Nike swoosh, drop, and then I'm coming through that ball. And notice where I finish with my paddle over my shoulder. You can over exaggerate this and for practice, and that's what I suggest doing, and making your elbow your nose. So you're coming through your shot, make your elbow your nose just like that. That will really help you to make sure that you're finishing high where you need to finish. Because a lot of players, as they keep practicing this, they're so focused on the swoosh that they'll stop their motion here. Now they're not practicing correct form. So remember, it's that swoosh, but finish with your elbow as your nose. So again, the swoosh, down, pet the dog, up, and we create that windshield wiper, and then we come over our shoulder, making our elbow our nose.